The night I discovered the affair, everything I thought I knew about my life came crashing down. It wasn't the anger that hit me first. It wasn't even the disbelief. It was the cold, sinking realization that I had been living a lie for years. And the worst part? I had no idea. I stood there, staring at the screen of my phone, my hand trembling. The message was simple, yet it tore through me like a blade. I have all the proof. She's been lying to you. You're not imagining things. My heart raced. I couldn't breathe. For a split second, everything around me felt like it was slowing down. I looked up at the house, the one I had spent years building with Melanie, my wife. The one that was supposed to be a home, a safe place. But now it was nothing more than a house of lies. I thought I knew everything about her. I thought I trusted her. But now it all felt like a cruel joke. The world outside was quiet, but inside I was about to face a storm that would tear everything apart. I clenched my fists, took a deep breath and walked toward the door. I didn't know what I would find inside. I didn't know if I was ready for what was about to happen. But I had no choice. I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. What was waiting for me on the other side of that door? Would I be able to face it without losing everything I loved? If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt dismissed, betrayed, or made to feel invisible, or maybe you've experienced the deepest loneliness or that unbearable pain of losing those you love most, share it. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe because maybe the next story will remind you of your own strength. When I walked into the house, the silence hit me first. It was the kind of silence that felt heavier than the usual quiet of a late evening. This wasn't the calm after a busy day. It was something different. Something that felt off. The kitchen looked the same. The table where we ate dinner, the counter where we'd laughed together. But now, it all felt like a stage, like I was walking through a scene from someone else's life. Everything that had once been warm, familiar, and comforting now felt cold and distant. I glanced down at the counter, where I had laid out the evidence. The hotel receipts. The text messages. The bank statements. Each piece felt like a weight in my stomach. These weren't just random documents anymore. They were the truth, unavoidable and undeniable. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel rage, not yet. What I felt was emptiness. Like I was holding on to a life that wasn't really mine. How did I miss this? How did I not see it? I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't deny it either. The truth was right there in front of me, and it was impossible to unsee. Then I heard the door open. Melanie stepped in from the back, like she hadn't just dropped a bombshell in my world. She didn't even look at me at first. She dropped her gym bag on the floor, went straight to the counter, and started unpacking as if nothing was wrong. Like everything was just normal. I stood there, frozen for a moment. She hadn't even glanced at the papers. She had no idea I knew. "Jackson, I'm so tired," Melanie said, her back still to me. "Can we just talk later?" I couldn't hold it in any longer. Later? After what you've been doing behind my back? No, Melanie. We're talking now. Her shoulders stiffened. She finally turned to face me, her eyes avoiding mine. She wasn't ready to face what I had in front of her. I slid the hotel receipt toward her. "Or maybe you were meeting G at the Westbrook Inn. What's that about?" Her face dropped for a split second. I saw panic, but only for a moment. It quickly turned to something colder, more guarded. "You went through my things?" she asked, her voice sharp, almost mocking. "No," I said, my voice steady despite everything. "I didn't need to. It's all there, on our shared accounts. I just want the truth, Melanie. That's all." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't flinch. She didn't back down. "You want honesty?" she spat, taking a deep breath. "Fine. You want the truth?" "I'm suffocating, Jackson. I'm tired of being perfect, tired of being what you want me to be. And Garrett, he makes me feel alive. Something you haven't done in a long time." Garrett. The name from the texts. The man she had been seeing behind my back. I felt my stomach tighten. How long? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't hesitate. Long enough. Long enough to know I don't need to answer to you anymore. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. She wasn't just admitting to an affair. She was saying she was done. Done with me. Done with our life. Done with everything I thought we had. She grabbed her phone, her fingers flying over the screen. I'll call him, she said, as if that would somehow make this better. I'll tell him how crazy you're being. I wasn't sure if she realized what she was doing. She wasn't even thinking about our kids, asleep just down the hall. I wanted to scream, to break down. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I stepped toward her, my hand raised, not in anger but in caution. I'm taking the kids to Kurt's place tonight, I said, my voice as calm as I could make it. I'm not letting you drag them into this. Her face twisted with fury. You're not going anywhere with them, she growled, taking a step toward me. But I was already turning, moving toward the stairs to grab their things. I had no time for this. I couldn't afford to waste any more time. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about keeping my kids safe. It was about protecting them from the chaos she was creating. I didn't look back as I grabbed the kids' things, my hands moving automatically. The weight of the bags felt like nothing compared to the weight in my chest. Every step I took away from the house, from her, felt like I was leaving behind a life I thought I understood. A life that wasn't real. The kids didn't wake when I carried them into the car. They were still in their pajamas, clutching their stuffed animals, blissfully unaware of the chaos that had just torn through their world. I kissed them gently on the forehead before buckling them in, and for a moment, I let myself feel the warmth of their little bodies, the soft breath rising and falling in their chests. They were safe, and that was all that mattered. I drove to Kurt's house, my mind racing, but I couldn't focus on anything other than the sound of their steady breathing in the back seat. I couldn't lose them. I couldn't let Melanie's actions steal their future. No matter how much I was hurting, I had to stay strong for them. Kurt opened the door without question, his face already hard with concern. He took the kids without a word, leading them to the guest room. He didn't ask what had happened. He didn't need to. He knew it was bad. I'll be here if you need anything, he said, his voice calm, steady. Exactly what I needed right now. I just nodded and watched as he shut the door behind him, taking them into the safety of his home, away from the storm that was brewing at mine. I stood on his front porch for a moment, the cold night air cutting through my jacket. The weight of everything was hitting me now, all at once. My marriage, my family, my entire sense of self. It was slipping through my fingers. And the worst part? I didn't know how to fix it. I pulled out my phone and dialed the police. Every ring felt like an eternity, but when the dispatcher picked up, I took a deep breath and gave her the details. I was calm, but my voice shook. I had to do this the right way. I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. I couldn't let Melanie make me act out of anger. Within 45 minutes, Detective Luis Alvo's cruiser pulled into Kurt's driveway. He turned off the lights before he even got out of the car, trying not to disturb the neighbors. He stepped out, a no-nonsense kind of guy, his eyes scanning the situation like he was already piecing things together. "Mr. Blake," he said, shaking my hand firmly. His grip was steady, but his eyes were sharp, assessing. "Let's get all the facts, starting with your injury." He took a few photos of my shoulder, the bruise already darkening from where Melanie shoved me against the kitchen island. He asked about the events of the night, and I told him everything. The receipts, the messages, the confrontation, the violence. He listened without interruption, taking notes, nodding as I spoke. When I finished, he looked up at me. "You did the right thing by taking the kids to Kurt's," he said, his voice low but serious. "Most people don't think that clearly in a crisis." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but it was only temporary. There was still so much more to do, so much I needed to figure out. This wasn't just about protecting my family in the short term. It was about making sure nothing like this ever happened again. Before he left, Detective Alvo gave me a few more instructions, advising me to document everything. He also warned me about Melanie's potential to escalate things. "She's not going to take this lying down," he said, his tone serious. "Stay alert. Document every contact. If she shows up at your neighbor's house or makes any threats, call 911 immediately." I thanked him, though my mind was already racing again. How far would Melanie go to keep control? What would she do next? As he drove away, I stood in the driveway for a moment longer, trying to pull myself together. I had to be smart about this. I had to stay ahead of her, stay calm for the kids, for me. I couldn't let my emotions dictate my next steps, not now. I had a plan to make and I needed to stick to it. I walked back inside Kurt's house, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on me. But when I saw the kids sleeping soundly in their beds, I felt a flicker of hope. They were safe. For the first time in hours, I let myself breathe. I was going to fight for them, no matter what. The next morning, I barely slept. I woke up early, my mind racing with everything I had to do. I couldn't afford to lose focus. Not now. Kurt was still asleep on the couch, the kids were safe in the guest room, and I had a mountain of evidence to go through. But none of that seemed to matter as much as what came next. I couldn't let Melanie have any more control over my life. Over my family. My hands trembled as I opened my laptop and logged into our shared bank account. The cold, bright screen felt like a mirror, showing me everything I hadn't seen before. I started scrolling through the transactions, marking anything unusual with a yellow highlight. Cash withdrawals between $300 and $500, all from the same ATM, always late at night. It felt like the pieces were starting to fall into place. I pulled up the map. The ATM was located across from a small complex called The Pines, a cluster of short-term furnished rentals. My stomach tightened. I remember now. Last summer, Melanie had insisted on staying behind during our family camping trip. She said she had work to catch up on, but I never thought to question it. I didn't see the signs. How could I be so blind? I went to the next thing on my list, our home security app. We'd installed cameras all over the house last year, just for peace of mind. I never thought I'd need to check them. But today I needed to know. I watched the footage from the last few weeks. Timestamp after timestamp, each one showed Melanie slipping out of the house after midnight. The camera caught her walking to her car, dressed in clothes that didn't match the time of night. She was careful, checking her phone each time, and always returning after a few hours. I saved the footage to my phone and made a backup on an external hard drive. I didn't trust anyone else to keep it safe. These weren't just random coincidences anymore. They were pieces of a calculated betrayal. And I was going to make sure they didn't disappear. As I sat there, scrolling through the security footage, I couldn't help but feel a sickening mix of disbelief and anger. How long had she been doing this? How much had I missed? But it wasn't just the affair that hurt the most. It was the lies. The manipulation. The way she had been able to look me in the eye every day while keeping this from me. Kurt came into the room with a mug of coffee, his face tired but supportive. He sat down next to me, his eyes scanning the screen. "You're doing the right thing," he said quietly. "But you need to get everything organized. Take control of it." I nodded, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the evidence. It was about taking control of my life again. I had to fight for it. For my kids. For my future. And I wasn't going to let her, or him, destroy everything I'd worked so hard to build. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations, phone calls, and endless paperwork. Every moment I spent sifting through documents felt like another step away from the life I had once known. The weight of it all was exhausting, but I couldn't afford to let up now. I had to protect my kids, and I had to make sure that everything was in place before Melanie could turn this around and use it against me. I met with my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Rachel Green. She didn't sugarcoat anything. "You've got a solid case," she said, flipping through the folder of evidence I had gathered. "The bank statements, the security footage, the messages. This isn't just an affair. This is a pattern of deception, and it's serious." Rachel's words should have reassured me, but they didn't. I had a case, sure, but what about my kids? What about the emotional toll this would take on them? It wasn't just about proving Melanie's betrayal. It was about making sure they didn't get caught in the crossfire. And that terrified me. I spent that afternoon drafting a temporary custody petition. Every time I wrote a word, I thought about what it meant for the kids. Would they be okay with all of this? Would they ever be the same again? I had to stay strong for them, but the truth was that every part of me was breaking inside. That evening, I was sitting on Kurt's couch, staring at the stack of papers in front of me, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, half expecting it to be Melanie or one of her friends trying to spin things their way. But it was a message from Detective Alvo. "I've got more info for you. Call me when you can." My heart skipped a beat. What now? Was this about the new evidence I had uncovered? What had Melanie done this time? I took a deep breath and dialed the number. Detective Alvo answered on the second ring, his voice low and serious. "Jackson, we need to talk about something. It's about the man you've been seeing in her messages." "Garrett." "Yeah," I said, my voice tight. "There's more to Garrett than you realize," he continued. "I've got some background on him. And it's not good." My stomach turned. The last thing I needed was another piece of this mess to unravel. But I wasn't backing down now. "Tell me," I said, steeling myself. "Garrett's a lot more involved than you think," Detective Alvo said, his voice steady but filled with a gravity that made my stomach drop. "I've been digging into his background. Turns out, he's got a record. Nothing major, but a few incidents that suggest he's not the kind of guy you want anywhere near your family." I felt my pulse quicken, my mind racing. What kind of incidents? I asked, my voice a little too sharp, but I couldn't help it. Assault charges. A restraining order from an ex-girlfriend. And a few run-ins with the law that didn't lead to convictions. But they're enough to raise red flags, Alvo continued. "I've got more details, but I need to meet you in person to go over everything." I felt my hands tighten around the phone. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was something much darker. Garrett wasn't just a guy Melanie was seeing. He was a threat. To me. To my family. And now to my kids. "Where do you want to meet?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. "Tomorrow morning at my office." "It's time to get ahead of this," he said. "We need to prepare for what comes next." I hung up, feeling the weight of the situation settle deeper into my bones. I couldn't escape this. Not anymore. Melanie's betrayal wasn't just an emotional wound, it was a dangerous game, and I was starting to realize how much I was about to lose if I didn't act fast. I spent the rest of the night organizing everything, making sure I had all the evidence in place. Bank statements, the text messages, the security footage, and now this new information about Garrett. It felt like I was piecing together the remnants of my life, trying to make sense of something that was beyond understanding. The kids were still asleep in Kurt's guest room, safe and unaware. But I knew the storm was coming, and it was only a matter of time before it hit. I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet street, wondering how things had gotten so out of hand. How had I missed all the signs? My heart clenched. There was no going back now. I was fighting for everything I loved. And I wasn't going to lose them. Not to her. Not to Garrett. The next day, I met with Alvo. What he told me next would change everything. The next morning, I walked into Detective Alvo's office, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. The walls were lined with case files, the faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. Alvo's desk was cluttered with notes, his computer screen filled with details I didn't want to see. But I had to see them. I had to know everything. He didn't waste time. As soon as I sat down, he pulled a folder from the top of his desk and slid it over to me. Inside were more documents. Garrett's criminal record, his known associates, and something I hadn't expected, a few photos from surveillance footage. They showed Garrett meeting Melanie at the Westbrook Inn. But it wasn't just the affair that shocked me. It was the way he acted. There was something cold and calculating in his demeanor. He wasn't just there to meet her. He was there to control her. "Here's where it gets complicated," Alvo said, his voice steady but low. "Garrett's not just some random guy. He's connected to a network of people who've been involved in shady deals. I've been tracking him for a while, and it's clear he's using Melanie, manipulating her. He's been trying to pull her into something deeper. My mind was spinning. Was this just an affair, or was Melanie being used in something far worse? I looked at the photos again, studying Garrett's expression. He wasn't in love with her. He was using her, just like he'd used everyone else in his life. And now he had gotten to her, to us. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice tight. I wasn't sure what I expected him to say, but I wasn't ready for what he told me next. "We need to act fast. If Melanie is involved in something illegal, we can't wait around. You have to take full control now of the custody case of your assets. And we're going to need to build a solid case against Garrett." Alvo's eyes met mine. This isn't just about an affair anymore. This is about protecting your family from a dangerous man. I felt the gravity of his words sink in. It wasn't just my marriage that was falling apart. It was my entire life. But I wasn't going to lose my kids. Not to Melanie. Not to Garrett. The following weeks felt like a blur. Each day was a battle, a constant fight to keep my head above water. The court proceedings were moving forward, but Melanie wasn't making it easy. She fought back with everything she had: denials, accusations, and even threats. The whole process felt like an endless tug of war, with my children at the center. But I couldn't afford to lose focus. One evening, I sat in Kurt's living room, staring at the stack of papers in front of me. My mind was reeling with all the information I had, all the details I had gathered, but it still didn't feel like enough. I had the hotel receipts, the text messages, the bank records, but it wasn't just about proving the affair anymore. It was about proving that Melanie had been manipulated and put my children in danger. The weight of it all was starting to break me down. There were days when I couldn't stop thinking about how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd let this happen. I kept telling myself I wasn't to blame, that I was doing the right thing. But the guilt still gnawed at me. Had I failed them? Then came the call from Detective Alvo. "Jackson," his voice was low, serious. "We've got more on Garrett. It's not just a matter of him being involved in the affair. He's been running a few illegal operations on the side. Drugs, money laundering. He's connected to some dangerous people, and now he's getting desperate." My stomach turned. Desperate. That word haunted me. The idea that Garrett, the man Melanie had brought into our lives, was involved in something so dangerous made my blood run cold. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "He's started making moves to cover his tracks," Alvo continued. "We're doing everything we can, but you need to be careful. Keep your distance. And if Melanie's still seeing him, you need to move fast. The situation's getting worse." I could feel the tension in my chest tightening. I wasn't just dealing with a failed marriage anymore. This was a criminal network, and Melanie was in the middle of it. She was still choosing him. She was still choosing him over us. I had to move fast. The walls were closing in, but this time I wasn't going to wait for things to fall apart. I was going to fight, and I was going to win. For my kids. For my family. The weight of everything was becoming suffocating. As the days passed, I couldn't escape the feeling that everything was spiraling out of control. I'd gathered all the evidence, filed for temporary custody, and was pushing forward with every ounce of energy I had left. But Melanie wasn't backing down, and now, with Garrett's involvement, I was facing an entirely new battle. I knew things were about to get worse before they got better. The constant threats from Melanie, subtle at first, then more blatant, made it clear that she wasn't just fighting for her marriage. She was fighting to keep her secrets buried. I saw it in her eyes when she came to the courthouse last week, her face a mask of frustration and defiance. But no matter how hard she tried, I wasn't going to back down. One evening, after a particularly draining day in court, I sat in Kurt's living room, going over the case files once more. It felt like a never-ending game of chess, where every move I made was met with an even stronger counterattack. The phone buzzed on the coffee table, interrupting my thoughts. It was a message from Detective Alvo. "We've got eyes on Garrett. He's been making moves, He's trying to get to Melanie before we do. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't have to ask what that meant. Garrett was getting desperate. And that meant he'd be willing to do anything to protect himself. And Melanie was still caught in the middle. I texted back, "What do I do?" The reply came almost immediately. "Stay vigilant. Keep the kids with you. If he makes any move toward her or you need to call me immediately. I've got backup." I shoved the phone back onto the table, frustration building inside me. I couldn't let them get to my kids. The thought of them being caught up in this mess, in something far bigger than any of us, was unbearable. That night I stayed up late, scanning the security footage once again. Every moment of the last few weeks felt like a countdown, ticking toward something I couldn't control. But I wasn't going to let Garrett, or Melanie, drag us down any further. I was going to finish this, no matter what it took. The next day, I was ready to take the fight to the next level. I wasn't going to wait for them to make their move. I was going to make mine first. The next morning, I met with Rachel again. I couldn't afford to waste any more time. We needed to make our next move, and it had to be quick. The longer this dragged on, the more it felt like everything was slipping out of my hands. "Jackson, we're close," Rachel said, her voice steady but urgent. "The evidence is piling up, and we've got a strong case for custody. But Garrett, he's a wild card. If we can't expose his connection to the illegal activities and tie him directly to the danger Melanie's in, we might lose everything." Her words hit hard. I knew she was right. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was about protecting my family from someone far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said, my voice firm. "But what if he makes a move on Melanie? What if he goes after her or the kids?" Rachel hesitated, then leaned forward. "I'm filing for a temporary restraining order against Garrett. We need to get ahead of him before he knows what hit him." I nodded, the weight of the decision settling in. This was going to be a battle. A long one. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep my composure, but I had no choice. I had to keep fighting not just for me but for my kids. For the life we deserved to have. After the meeting, I drove straight to Kurt's house, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. I told him everything Rachel had said, and his face grew serious. "You're doing the right thing, man," he said. "And I'm with you every step of the way." That evening, as I tucked the kids into bed, I kissed them each good night, a moment of peace in the chaos. My daughter, Lily, squeezed my hand. "Dad, are we going to be okay?" Her words stung like a knife. Am I doing the right thing? I wondered. Could I really shield them from all of this? "We'll be okay, sweetie," I whispered, brushing her hair back. "I promise." But as I closed the door behind me and stepped into the hallway, my heart was heavy. The battle was only beginning, and the fear of what might come next hung over me like a cloud. But I couldn't back down. Not now. Not ever. The following week dragged on like a never-ending storm. Every day felt like I was walking on a tightrope. One wrong move and everything would come crashing down. The legal process was grinding forward, but the weight of it all was wearing me down. I couldn't afford to let my guard down, not with Garrett lurking in the shadows and Melanie still making subtle threats. I had arranged a meeting with Detective Alvo to discuss the latest developments. When I walked into his office, he looked up from his desk, his eyes shadowed with the kind of focus that made my stomach churn. "I've got some news," he said, motioning for me to sit. "Garrett's associates have been trying to find out who's been digging into his life. We've intercepted some communications. He's getting suspicious, Jackson. And when people like him get suspicious, they get dangerous." My chest tightened. "What are you suggesting?" I asked, my voice tight with worry. "I'm suggesting you stay ahead of him. We're getting closer to connecting him to bigger operations. But for now, we need to keep everything low-key. No big moves unless we've got everything locked down. If Garrett realizes we're on him, he'll act fast, and you don't want to be caught in the crossfire." I nodded, though the words didn't sit well with me. I didn't want to wait anymore. Every second felt like a countdown. My kids were still at Kurt's, still safe for now, But how much longer would that last? What about Melanie? I asked, my voice quieter now. What if she's still in danger? Alvo leaned back in his chair, his face hardening. She is. And that's the part that worries me. She's not just in the dark anymore. She's involved, whether she wants to admit it or not. The longer she stays with Garrett, the more dangerous it gets, for her and for everyone around her. I felt a rush of anger. Why couldn't she see it? How could she still be making excuses for him? For everything. Then we need to move faster, I said, my tone firm. We can't just wait and watch this unfold. We will, Alvo replied. But we need to be patient. The walls are closing in on Garrett. And when they do, we'll be ready. The days blurred together as the tension mounted. The pressure was becoming unbearable, but I couldn't stop now. Every time I thought I had a moment to breathe, something else would happen. Another piece of the puzzle would fall into place, and I'd be right back at square one, trying to piece it all together. But there was no turning back. My kids needed me to stay strong, to finish what I started. The temporary custody hearing was approaching, and I was more anxious than ever. I had the evidence, but I knew that wasn't enough. I had to make the case airtight. I had to prove to the judge that my kids were better off with me, that they were safer with me than with their mother, who was still wrapped up in this dangerous web of lies and criminal activity. But what if Melanie turned it around? What if she used her charm, her calm demeanor, to paint me as the unstable one? I couldn't let that happen. I had to show them who she really was, who Garrett really was, and how this had all been a carefully orchestrated mess that put my family at risk. That afternoon, I sat down at the kitchen table, going over everything once more. Every receipt, every message, every piece of security footage. But this time, something was different. I wasn't just looking at evidence anymore. I was looking at the wreckage of my life, the things I'd lost, the things I had to fight for. My kids' future. My peace of mind. Everything. Kurt came in, his face tight with concern. You good? He asked. I didn't know how to answer him. I wasn't good. But I had to be. Just trying to get everything in order, I said, not looking up. This isn't just about the custody battle anymore. It's about keeping my family safe. And I'll do whatever it takes. Kurt nodded and sat down beside me. We'll get through this, man. You're not alone in this fight. That small reassurance was enough to push me forward. With Kurt by my side, I knew I had the strength to face whatever came next. But the truth was, I still didn't know how this would end. And the thought of losing my kids, of losing everything I had worked for, kept me up at night. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The day of the custody hearing arrived, and everything I'd been holding back for weeks came rushing to the surface. I woke up early, my stomach a knot of nerves. The kids were still at Kurt's, blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit. I'd done everything I could to protect them, to give them a sense of stability in all of this chaos, but I couldn't shake the feeling that today would change everything. I met with Rachel in the courthouse lobby. She was calm, composed, but I could see the determination in her eyes. We'd spent weeks preparing for this day, making sure we had every detail in place. The evidence was strong, irrefutable, even, but there was still a part of me that doubted it would be enough. There was always that nagging fear in the back of my mind, the fear that Melanie would turn it around, that she'd convince the judge I wasn't the one who deserved to have the kids. Rachel patted me on the shoulder. We're ready for this, Jackson, she said, her voice firm. You've done the work. Now we just have to trust the process. As we walked into the courtroom, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. The judge's stern face didn't help, his eyes scanning the room as if weighing every word. Melanie was already seated on the other side, looking perfectly composed as always. Her lawyer sat next to her, scribbling notes in silence. For a moment, it was hard to believe this was the woman I'd spent my life with, the woman I thought I knew. The hearing began. The judge asked us both to present our cases, and I could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. My mind raced as I spoke, presenting the evidence piece by piece. The hotel receipts, the bank records, the messages. I felt like I was peeling back every layer of our life together, exposing the raw truth. But every time I looked at Melanie, I saw a flash of something. Guilt, anger, but most of all, desperation. She didn't speak much, just nodded when necessary, but I knew her well enough to see the cracks forming. She knew she was losing. And then came the turning point, the moment that would decide everything. I watched as the judge looked over the photos of Garrett, the text messages, and the criminal records. He paused, his face unreadable. My heart stopped. What was he thinking? Finally, the judge spoke. I've seen enough. I'll be making my decision soon. I felt the weight of his words, but I also felt a glimmer of hope. This wasn't over yet, but for the first time in weeks, I had the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I could win. For my kids. For the future I still believed was possible. The days after the hearing passed in a blur. My thoughts were consumed with the judge's words, and the uncertainty of what he would decide. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything else. I spent every waking moment rehashing every detail, wondering if I'd missed something, if I'd said enough, if it would be enough to keep my kids safe. It was a Thursday when the phone rang. My heart skipped as I saw the caller ID. It was Rachel. I quickly answered, trying to steady my breath. "Jackson," she said, her voice calm but with an edge of seriousness. "The judge has made his decision." I felt the ground shift beneath me. What did he say? My voice was barely a whisper. Rachel paused for a moment. "You got the temporary custody. Full custody, Jackson. For now." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Full custody. I won. For the first time in what felt like forever, something went right. I couldn't believe it. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest finally lifted, even if just for a moment. Rachel's voice broke through my thoughts. "It's not over, Jackson. This is temporary, and you know Melanie's not going to give up. But for now, the kids are safe. They're yours." Tears burned in my eyes, and I had to take a moment to compose myself. I'd been fighting for this, for them, for so long, and now it was finally happening. My kids were safe. I wasn't losing them. I could already feel the guilt of everything that had happened to get here. The lies, the pain, the devastation, but it was worth it. They were safe. That was all that mattered. I called Kurt right after, barely able to contain my relief. "We did it, man," I said, my voice cracking. "I've got full custody. They're staying with me." There was a pause, then Kurt's familiar laugh on the other end of the line. "Told you you'd win. You're a hell of a dad, Jackson. You've got this." That night, I drove to pick up the kids. When I saw their faces light up as they ran toward me, I knew this was the beginning of something new. We'd survived the storm. Now it was time to rebuild. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Melanie wasn't going to walk away quietly, and Garrett's shadow still loomed. The fight wasn't finished, but I was ready for whatever came next. The days after the ruling were a mix of relief and uncertainty. Full custody was mine, but the fight wasn't over. It never would be, not as long as Melanie and Garrett were in the picture. The court might have given me a temporary victory, but that was only the beginning. I knew I had to stay vigilant. I couldn't let my guard down now. But for the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. I watched my kids laugh and play, their faces free from the worry they'd carried before. They were safe for now. The weight of the legal battle had lifted, but the emotional toll was still heavy. Every step I took forward was a reminder of how much I'd lost, and how much I still had to fight for. That night, as I tucked Lily and Ben into bed, I lingered in their rooms a little longer than usual. The soft glow of their nightlights filled the room, and I took a deep breath, savoring the stillness. I could hear their steady breathing, their small hands clutching their favorite stuffed animals. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of peace. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at them. The world outside was still uncertain, but in this room, in this moment, everything was okay. I wasn't going to let anything take them away from me. I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the overwhelming pain. But most of all, I thought about the future. The one I would create for my kids. It wasn't going to be perfect, and there would be challenges ahead, but it would be ours. A future where they could grow up feeling safe, loved, and protected. A future where they knew they were never alone. I leaned over and kissed them both goodnight. "I love you," I whispered. "We'll be okay. I promise." As I walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind me, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This battle was far from over, but I had already won the most important thing of all, my family. And as long as I had them, I knew I could face whatever came next.